Almost every family starts in the same place. When the moment comes, when it's clear a parent can't keep going entirely on their own, the first instinct is nearly universal. Keep them at home. Of course you do. Home is where the memories are. Home is what your parent begs for. And home, everyone assumes, is the cheaper option. Assisted living is the expensive choice, the one that drains the savings. It's the one you turn to only when there's no other way. Home is the affordable, loving default. That belief feels so obvious that most families never question it. And it's exactly that unquestioned belief that leads them, month after month, into a financial hole they never saw coming. Because here is the truth that families learn too late. Almost always after the money is already gone, keeping a parent at home is not automatically the cheaper option. Sometimes it's far more expensive than assisted living. And the families who assume otherwise are often the ones who end up paying the most, for the longest, with the least to show for it. I'm not telling you this to push you toward a facility. I want to be clear about that from the start, because this is an emotional subject, and it's easy to hear an agenda that isn't there. Home is the right answer for a great many families. But it is only the right answer when you go in with your eyes open, knowing the real numbers on both sides instead of the imaginary numbers everyone assumes. So today, I'm going to walk you through the actual costs of aging at home versus assisted living, the real figures, the hidden ones, and the ones that ambush families 6 months in. I'm going to show you the specific point at which home care quietly becomes more expensive than a facility, because there is one, and most people blow right past it without noticing. When families picture keeping a parent at home, the cost they imagine is usually close to zero. Mom already owns the house. There's no rent, no facility bill, no monthly invoice. She's just staying where she already is. What could it cost? And in the very early stages, when a parent needs only a little help, that instinct is roughly right. Home is cheap when the need is small. The problem is that the need almost never stays small. It grows quietly and steadily. And as it grows, the cost grows with it. So let's actually add it up piece by piece, the way families almost never do until they're already deep in it. Start with the part people do think about: paid help in the home. In the beginning, it might be a few hours a week, a home aide to help with bathing, dressing, some cleaning, a little cooking. In the United States, in-home care runs around $30 an hour. That doesn't sound catastrophic. A few hours a week is manageable, but watch what happens as the need grows. A parent who needs help all day isn't a few hours a week situation anymore. Say they need help 8 hours a day. At $30 an hour, that's around $7,000 a month. And 8 hours a day still leaves 16 hours where your parent is alone, including the entire night, which for many families is the most dangerous stretch of all. If your parent reaches the point of needing someone around the clock, you are talking massive costs. Costs can climb past $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month. Around the clock, in-home, one-on-one care is one of the most expensive forms of care that exists. It is routinely more expensive than assisted living, and frequently more expensive than a nursing home. That is the fact that ambushes families. They chose home because it was the affordable option. They wake up one day paying more for home care than they ever would have paid for a facility. But the paid aid is only the visible cost. Underneath it sits a whole layer of hidden expenses. There's the cost of making the home safe, the bathroom modifications, the ramps, The stair solutions, the equipment. A stair lift can run thousands. A full bathroom renovation can run many thousands more. There's the cost of medical equipment, the hospital bed, the wheelchair. There's the ongoing cost of supplies that never stops. Incontinence products, wound care, the endless small things. There are the home's own running costs, mortgage or property tax, utilities, insurance, maintenance, repairs. A house is expensive to simply keep standing, and all of that continues on top of the care. And then there's the cost almost nobody puts a number on, even though it's often the largest of all. The cost to you, the family caregiver, because most families don't pay for professional help right away. Instead, a daughter or a son fills the gap themselves. They cut their work hours or leave a job entirely. They drive across town or across the state again and again. They lose income, lose career progression, lose retirement contributions, lose their own savings, and pour their own time, which has real economic value, into keeping a parent home. When researchers try to put a dollar figure on the unpaid labor of family caregivers, the national total runs into the hundreds of billions. For an individual family, it can be tens of thousands a year. When you hear, "home is cheaper," ask, cheaper for whom? Because very often, the answer is that home looks cheaper on paper only because one family member is silently absorbing an enormous, invisible cost. Let me make this real. Picture a daughter in her early 50s with a good job and a teenage kid. Her mother, widowed and in her late 70s, starts to slip. At first, it's nothing, some gas and time to handle bills. Then a small fall makes it every evening. Then her mother can't be left overnight. She hires an aide for a few hundred a week. Within a year, she's paying $5,000 a month out of her mother's savings and covering every night herself. Her income dropped, retirement stopped, and she's exhausted. She never made a decision to spend this much. She just took one reasonable step after another, and each step was small. That is how families end up here, not through one bad choice, but 100 loving ones. Now hold that story, because there's another version of it that ends differently. But to see it, we first have to look honestly at the option that daughter was so afraid of. So let's tally the home option honestly. If your parent needs only light help, home is genuinely affordable. But as needs grow, the realistic cost can easily exceed assisted living. Assisted living. The phrase alone makes most families flinch. Let's look at what it actually costs and what you actually get without the flinch. In the US, the average is roughly $5,000 a month. That is a serious number, but this single monthly number usually includes a whole bundle of things: rent, meals, housekeeping, laundry, utilities, activities, and staff available around the clock. When you remember that around-the-clock care at home can cost $10,000 to $15,000 a month, that $5,000 facility number starts to look very different. You're not comparing $5,000 against zero. You're comparing it against the true, fully loaded cost of replicating all those services in a private home. Now, for significant medical needs or dementia, you're looking at memory care or skilled nursing, which run higher. But the parent who needs that level of care is exactly the parent for whom home care would be most expensive. The sicker your parent is, the more the home option costs too. So the comparison doesn't tilt cleanly toward home as needs increase. In many cases, it tilts the other way. There is a level of need at which home care quietly becomes more expensive than assisted living. Below that point, Home is cheaper. Above it, the math flips, often without the family noticing. The tragedy is that families set their course on the side of the line where home is cheapest and never recalculate. They're paying more for a worse outcome because the original conditions no longer exist. So why do families get this so wrong? First, home costs are hidden and scattered, while the facility cost is a single, visible, frightening number. The visible cost frightens, the scattered cost hides. Second, choosing a facility feels like an active choice you're responsible for, possibly a betrayal. Staying home feels like the absence of a decision, like loyalty. The path of least emotional resistance is not the path of least cost. Third, the need grows so gradually that no single step feels big enough to trigger a re-evaluation. You add 2 hours, then a little more. You never notice the line you crossed months ago. Before I give you that clarifying question, I have to talk about programs that help. This is complicated, but you need to know the broad shape of it. Programs exist for veterans and those with limited assets. These programs almost always reward families who plan early and punish families who wait. The family that looks into this a year before they need it has options. The family in a crisis finds waiting lists. Isolation is a genuine health risk for older adults living alone. A good facility can mean more social contact for the parent and a restored relationship for the adult child. Weigh the things without price tags honestly. So here is the question I promised you. Before I give it to you, let's answer the objections. My parent made me promise. Consider what they were actually asking for. Not to be abandoned, but to be loved. The promise that matters is about love, not a building. Second, I'd feel too guilty. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hand the hardest care to professionals so you can be family again. And third, we simply can't afford a facility. You may already be spending more on home care in scattered ways. If money is tight, that's the strongest reason to find out what programs they qualify for. Now, here is the question. When trying to decide which path makes sense, start with this. What does my parent actually need realistically today and in the near future? And what is the true, fully counted cost of meeting that exact level of need in each setting? When you ask that precisely, the fog clears. You stop comparing a real facility bill against an imaginary free home. Either way, you finally know, and knowing lets you choose well. Remember the daughter who chose differently. She counted before she had to. She found out home would soon cost more and leave her mother alone. She chose assisted living while it was still a choice. Her mother got social meals and 24-hour safety. The daughter got to be a daughter again. It cost less than the home path would have. The only difference was that she counted honestly and chose on purpose. The most expensive path is choosing home because it feels cheaper and never recalculating. That is the worst of every world. You're thinking about this now before you're forced to.